So hello, welcome back to the next episode, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most iconic Koenigsegg's ever created, the Agera RS Naraya edition. So I want to cover off the specific specification of this car before we get into the fact that this created a new world speed record. So let's just delve into the details. First of all, I'm going to kick right off with the components that you cannot miss. These contrasting shapes and contours here. This is actual gold leaf, 24 karat gold leaf applied by hand. When you get up close to it, you can see the application marks. It's more akin to something that you would find on the ceiling of a grand cathedral rather than a car. But the way that it accentuates the shape of the car is stunning. We've been really fortunate to spend a lot of time around a lot of Koenigsegg's. And while they're all fantastic and they're all unique in their own way, I think not only is this probably the most famous car out there, but it's also one of the most striking. I think it looks phenomenal. Now, gold leaf aside, that is laid on top of an exposed blue carbon fiber body shell. Now, I say body shell because what is unique about this car, and I shall show you right here inside the door, is while the external body shell is blue carbon, the actual tub itself, so the fundamental platform and structure of this whole car is all blue carbon fiber. I've not seen another car which actually has its chassis made out of a tinted carbon. Oftentimes it's only the external. This is internal, the gold runs throughout, it's everywhere. A really subtle detail is on the inside of the central console. Everywhere else is gloss blue, but the central console here is a satin, sort of matte blue finish. So there's all these really beautiful, intricate details. But of all of the carbon tubs I've seen on all sorts of different cars around the world, to have the fundamental structure of your car made it in a tinted carbon, bonkers stuff. The details on this car are endless. Now then, speaking of details, if there was ever a set of wheels you didn't want to curb, it's these. Now, not only are these the air core carbon fiber wheels, so these are a single piece of hollow carbon fiber wheel, but they also have the gold leaf running around the very edge of the wheel. I mean, I just can't imagine. Imagine a scratch on that. How would you even be able to contemplate that? And then the central locking wheel nut, gold. What's fantastic about these wheels, they weigh 6.5 kilograms each. It's just ultra light stuff. Combined, they have an unsprung mass weight saving of around about 20 kilograms. Now, the benefit of that is for steering feel, just general handling, and even the pickup of acceleration, because there's less weight, less mass for the engine to start to spin. So not only do they look fancy, but they actually work too. I also like the fact that the blue has been continued on to Koenigsegg's very own braking system. So Koenigsegg make their braking systems now all in-house. Pretty big deal, but as a result, they can go ahead and match their paints and keep on that gold theme on the brakes. Okay, so just behind the wheel arch, you might have noticed this symbol here, which conveniently just so happens to be in a similar shape to the Koenigsegg shield. This is actually the outline of a G and an S, which stands for Ghost Squadron. Now, if you follow me around to the back of the car, if you're familiar with Koenigsegg's, you might have noticed that on the back of pretty much all of them is a symbol of a ghost. Now, the story goes that Koenigsegg's are built in the old hangars of the Swedish Air Force, and where this particular hangar is located in Ängelholm, there's often a lot of mist coming off the sea. Story goes that the locals of the area could always hear but not see the Swedish Air Force taking off and flying, and therefore they gave the name of the jets the Ghost Squadron. Now, when Koenigsegg moved into these hangars, one of the old pilots, who was the last to fly out of there, came back to Christian and asked, would it be possible to use their squadron symbol in their factory? Christian said he would take it a step further, and every car that has been built in the old airbase comes out of the factory with a Ghost Squadron symbol on it. It's got to be one of the coolest symbols in the automotive industry. All right, so as opposed to the reactive aero wing on the Agera R, the Agera RS got its own wing, and not only was it hydraulically actuated and therefore an active aero wing, but it also adopted its own end plates too. So you can spot an Agera RS by its end plates if nothing else. Now, there was just 25 Agera RS made. This is chassis 127, and they were made between 2015 and 2017. And what's really significant about this car is that the majority of the learnings and even an element of the ethos of the one-to-one made its way into this platform. So when we go out for a drive in a minute, no doubt it's going to be a really special place to be. But first of all, let's open up the business end and find out what it's adopted from one-to-one to make this the world speed record car. I mean, the detail just keeps going on, doesn't it? So the headline figure really that surrounds this car is the world speed record that it set on a closed road in Nevada. Now, in order to truly set an official record, it has to be done in both directions to get an average speed. And what this car achieved was 277.9 miles an hour as an average speed in both directions. I mean, this thing wears number plates. It's road legal on normal tires, 277 miles an hour. Now, that is achieved because it has 1,160 horsepower and 1,280 Newton meters of torque. What's quite funny over this series, these numbers seem to come out of my mouth and they're becoming meaningless now. They're so large that the only way to really contextualize it is to feel it behind the wheel. So in a minute, I shall share with you just how quick a world speed record breaking car feels like. Now, just on the engine bay itself, the blue exposed carbon and the gold continues, even on the XXX suspension here. Just quickly on that, what this is effectively a third damper that helps to reduce squat under heavy acceleration and also optimizes the contact patch of the tires. Now, these Michelin tires are a 3-4-5 section tire. Yeah, everything about this is the numbers are endless and vast. So we've got gold writing on the XXX third damper, and all of these extras here, they're all contrasting blue exposed carbon fiber, even the airbox. I mean, the sculpture of it is phenomenal. You'd have your airbox in your lounge alone. It's a phenomenal thing. And as you look up through here, I mean, the sculpture of it all and that gold leaf, it's like a golden cave in there. Phenomenal. Now up here, this is the only Koenigsegg I've seen which has used gold on the engine bay. The irony of it on this car is that it actually isn't here just for show or to tie in with the theme. Gold has excellent thermal properties to keep the engine bay thermally optimized. So it does actually have a function. It's just funny that this is the only one I've actually seen it on. So special place to be. So fun fact about that world speed record is that Koenigsegg had closed that road in Nevada for 3 whole days. Turns out they actually broke the record on their very first run. It was that much of an effortless undertaking. But what was impressive was that the tires which were fitted on that car had such little friction on them that the guy who owned the RS out in Nevada continued running the car that broke the world speed record on the same set of tires for the next 3 years. Crazily optimized between Michelin and Koenigsegg as an integral component. The heat that is normally generated and the friction at that speed is crazy. So the fact that he kept on running them is amazing. The Agera RS also holds another world record, which is a run from 0 to 249 miles an hour and then back to standstill in just 36.44 seconds. Now, as a spotter context, that's actually 5.56 seconds faster than the Bugatti Chiron. Okay, check this out. Imagine every time you filled your car up with fuel, you're basically interacting with a gold bar. Look at that. The detail is outstanding. Now, speaking of fuel, Agera RS is running Koenigsegg's flex fuel system, which means it can run anything from 95 octane petrol all the way up to E85 and I think even E100. Now, what's really cool is that even on your standard petrol pump fuel, the car will develop that incredible 1,160 horsepower. It's really trick stuff. So, as far as interiors go, this thing is up there. I actually think they've done an amazing job of matching the theme of the exterior with the interior. Details just keep going. Now, it has adopted the one-to-one seats too. So these are Koenigsegg's very own in-house made carbon seats, and yes, they're also made from exposed blue carbon. They're also running proper harnesses, which are bolted into the bulkhead behind here. The other part, of course, of the harness is the buckle, and rather than it flapping around like it does in pretty much every other car that I've driven with harnesses, Koenigsegg have created this gorgeous recess where the harness buckle just sits nicely in place, so it's not flapping around. That's a really nice detail, and of course on that harness buckle is a lovely Koenigsegg logo. And then, out of all of the details on this car, possibly the most awesome or ostentatious of them all is the Naraya gold leaf nameplate badge that sits between the two blue carbon seats. Not only is it coated in gold, but the Naraya logo itself is even emblazoned with real diamonds. I'm not joking. Check it out. Anyway, enough detail talk. Just one more thing. Check out the key. Yes, you guessed it. More blue, more gold. Okay, here we are. Quite honestly, the last few weeks, if you've been following the series, it's getting out of hand, isn't it? I don't want to say I'm becoming blasé driving all these ridiculous hypercars, but it's the numbers. I mean, as I've been learning and digesting the stats and figures and innovations that Koenigsegg have made throughout the journey so far, I feel like I've been revising for my pilot's license. It's getting so complex, but here we go. This is the Agera RS, ladies and gentlemen. The significance of this car is that a lot of the learnings, the R&D and the innovation that was created for the one-to-one car has made its way down into this car. Only in this car, it's a little bit more of a usable car. But because it's learned from the 1.1, it is still a sort of track-biased Koenigsegg. 1,160 brake horsepower and 1,280 Newton meters of torque. Honestly, when I get around to talking about normal supercars again after this, it's going to sound really embarrassing. Anyway, what does that feel like? After the first and pull of it. It's really sophisticated. And that's one of the massive evolutions that I felt throughout this series so far. It's really cool to witness it. If you listen carefully, you might hear it in a minute. Hear that? It's like a sort of grinding. That's traction control, it's not engine. And that's stopping over 1,000 horsepower, putting me into the next county. Now, one last thing, I do want to speak specifically about these air core wheels as part of the driving experience. Now, in the earlier Koenigsegg's, there were no carbon fiber wheels. The steering feel was still fantastic. But the benefit of the air core wheels is it saves 20 kilograms of unsprung mass on each corner of the car. Now, if you magnify the G-force of a wheel when it's at super high speeds like this is capable of, saving that weight just reduces so much stress through the wheel, on the car, and also on the tyres. So to have these air cores just makes the agility of it through the steering, and of course under accelerative load the engine has less mass to rotate, so that's in part to why the throttle response of Koenigsegg's air core wheels on feels so sharp. It's just less weight to spin up. Okay, so this has been an absolutely bonkers experience up until this point. Now, this might be the sweet spot of the Koenigsegg Agera range. The reason being, the RS has adopted a lot of the innovations and learning from the one-to-one program, but without being quite so hardcore. Whereas the one-to-one theatrical experience might be turned up to 11, this is more of a 10, and that's no bad thing. And it just feels just that little bit more, just slightly more road bias, even though it has had the track learnings from the one-to-one. Now, the next episode, we're going to be taking the next J-curve leap forward in Koenigsegg's story, because we're talking hybrid hypercars in the form of the Agera. So be sure to tune in for the next episode. As always, thanks so much for watching. I shall see you next time. Ciao.